Torah TV. The world is thinking.
Right, and although even here in the United States there are, you could call them extremists, call them whatever, who say that Islam in America is almost people need to be on guard against Muslims in America. These are people who of course traffic in threatening ideas anyway, but it seems like they're trying to paint all Muslims with one broad brushstroke. And I don't know whether it's working or not. The polls you're indicating at the outset, talking about a number of Americans don't really see Islam as a peaceful religion. Maybe it is working in that sense. I mean, why are those numbers stable in that way?
Well, I'll tell you what. Another thing that the poll indicated is that about 60% of Americans claim that they've never actually met a Muslim, which I find hard to believe because I mean, have you ever been to a doctor? The chances are he's a Muslim. I don't know if they think that all Muslims wear turbans or something. I don't really understand that. But what it did indicate is that of those who know at least one Muslim, their impression of Islam was drastically improved. So in a way, I think that what these polls indicate is not so much about Americans' impressions about Islam or about Muslims, but it's sort of a part and parcel of a larger problem of identity that Americans face. We are not a country in which ethnicity and nationality mean the same thing. There is no such thing as an ethnic American, or, well, there were, but we managed to massacre most of them. The fact of the matter is that in the United States, our identity is quite often, throughout our history, formed in direct opposition to an other. And that other constantly changes. In the 19th century, it was Catholics. We passed federal laws in this country stripping Catholics of their human rights. In the 20th century, it was Jews. They looked different, they prayed different, they seemed like they weren't Americans. But certainly no one in the 21st century would hold those views. I mean, certainly nobody in their right mind would hold such views about Catholics and Jews. And I think that Muslims just tend to be the sort of, the new other, if you will. And I think that's going to change too, and it's going to be a generational shift. I think that the first real massive wave of Muslim immigrants into this country in the 1950s and 60s, let's be clear for a moment, the first wave of Muslim immigrants in this country were slaves. They were brought here on slave ships. They were predominantly Muslims from Africa. But in the 20th century, the sort of first major wave of Muslim immigrants in the 50s and 60s, they came primarily from countries in which political participation wasn't actually a reality. I'll tell you just a quick sort of personal story. I remember after September 11th, I went back to visit my parents, who are not by any means pious Muslims, and not all that patriotic, to be frank. But when I drove up to my parents' house, it was covered in American flags. And I walked in and I said, "What's with the flags everywhere?" And my mother said to me, "They're watching." My mother, who came from Iran, in which they are watching. And I think that the children of those immigrants, I wasn't born here in the United States, but those who were born here in the United States and who have thoroughly absorbed the ideals of America and have reconciled their Islamic identity with their American identity, they are going to start making certain demands, and they have certain expectations of this country that their parents didn't have. They're going to be much more politically active, socially active. They are going to make the demands that their economic prowess allows them to make of this country. And I guarantee you that 50 years from now, we're not going to think about Islam in the same way or Muslims in the same way. But don't worry, we'll find some other scapegoat by then. So.
A reminder to our radio audience, you're listening to the Commonwealth Club of California radio program. We're talking with Reza Aslan about Islamic identity in the United States. If you do a Google on Muslims in America, as I did earlier today, and maybe that was a mistake, but if you do a Google on that, you'll find something said, the headline was, "Can Muslims be American?" And who are they really was the subhead. And I thought, wait a minute, oh, this is one of these hate websites. But if you go to it, it's actually profiles, it's called muslimindex.org, and it's profiles of well-known people who happen to be Muslim. For example, Shaquille O'Neal, I had no idea the NBA player is Muslim, Hakeem Olajuwon, of course, and others.
Michael Jackson, let's not forget Michael.
Michael Jackson, exactly. Although that's open to debate. But this is a theme, and again, you're talking about how 50 years from now this won't really, people won't even care about such things, but now people do, and a lot of Muslims will say, look, we have been here, we are here, here are people just like us who you embrace, yet you may not realize they are Muslim. Have you encountered that? Is that something that's, I mean, it's certainly not unique to the Muslim American community.
Sure, absolutely. And you know, I was watching in the various documentaries and news programs about Senator Ted Kennedy's passing. Of course, we've been watching a lot about the Kennedy family, and you recall that it was not barely 50 years ago in which the arguments about Kennedy being president was that his loyalty could not be to the United States. His loyalty must be to Rome as a Catholic. Now, we look at those documentaries and we laugh at that thought. It's ridiculous. And I think we'll look back at this time with the same attitude. In a sense, really, this isn't about Islam. It's about America. What does it mean to be American? Is it acceptance of a set of political principles? Is it a citizenship test? What is it? I mean, is there some sort of immigrational primacy that you get? The thing about American identity is that it's always been so malleable. This is the positive and the negative aspect of it. The good and the bad is that it's so malleable, so infinitely hyphenable, that it can be whatever you want it to mean. But that, of course, threatens some people. And I think that, in a sense, we have to see the way that a lot of this fear of Islam in the United States is expressed as part and parcel of the larger issues of identity formation that have always been a part of the American cultural fabric.